We're there, we're live.
Yay. Hello, live.
Hello. I'm here with Karen White, and Sharon is not joining us today because she's got electricity issues, which is normally what I have fairly regularly in rural Ireland. So I have the pleasure of Karen's company. And today we were going to talk about the lessons, the losses, the tears, and the triumphs from 2020.
And Mary Anna, if I can just say, in a way, Sharon not being with us and she is missed is a perfect example of 2020 and us making plans and then life happening.
Yes. And I think once we start noticing that stuff about 2020, we could all add everything into it, because last night I went to make myself a cup of tea, and I'm British and that's important for me, and my kettle broke and I was like, could you be any worse? 2020.
Exactly. It's like
I'm blaming everything.
another thing.
Yeah, everything's in the pot there. Okay. So we were going to kind of start off with a kind of, you were thinking about the moods from the year, and I think for me the strangest thing about the year was this shared global experience, and noticing, working with clients around the world, the kind of wave of similar but nuanced emotion.
Yeah. And I think that I think it would be fair to categorize this year as a year of losses
Mm.
in very big ways, and also then the little losses along the way, just the loss of what we thought was going to happen, which, like the kettle breaking last night, to very big losses. A lot of people have lost their lives,
Yeah,
and just in a way, it's broken a transparency of how we even think about loss. And so our moods in relation to that is it's amplified. And I certainly, with my clients and with myself, have experienced that amplification of moods,
mm,
including the joy. It's not like, oh, everything's been gloom and doom, but I think that our moods become very apparent in times like this.
absolutely. And especially, in within families living in locked down together and things, they can be amplified. I
Yeah.
was talking to my daughter about the year last night, and one of the things for her, of course, was not having school for 6 months, and she's an only child and feeling lonely and everything. And for me, actually, weirdly, looking back, that was one of the highlights, just getting to be with her all the time.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it feels like there's been a shift in emotion as well, from the early real sense of fear and anxiety, um, of, oh my goodness, we're actually living in one of these sort of disaster scenarios, that we hear about, but we're actually experiencing it. I can remember that kind of feeling like it was rolling towards me, and then okay, right, well, we just have to get on with it. And now, I don't know, a sense, well, there's a strange thing, there's a bit of a sense, the UK's just done the first vaccination in the world. In the Northern Ireland, just over the border, they've done a vaccination, and it feels a bit over euphoric, a bit like a false sense of joy, where the reality is that actually some of the impact hasn't yet hit home. We're more likely than ever to be affected by it right now, and it's going to be a while before vaccines have an impact. So there's a bit of a giddy feeling at the moment. Hey, Christmas is coming, we're going to go shopping, the lockdown's lifted, kind of, oh goodness, a bit of a
Yeah.
worrying sense.
Sorry, Mary Anna, there's a echo in the background, or there was, seems to have gone now. So with my voice, so I just wanted to check. It's gone now, so that's great.
I'm not getting it, but perhaps I was sitting back from my computer.
Okay, no, it's gone. I agree with you, and in a way, I think now, we were chatting before we went live. I think you said that the stats are that we're 100 times more likely to get it than
That's what they were saying in England, certainly. Yeah.
yes. yeah, than when we began. And I have a feeling that trajectory path, it might not be to that extent, but I'd imagine that's a worldwide trend. And certainly in South Africa, the numbers are increasing exponentially. And it's almost, how do you stay the course? And this is a mood thing, you know, it's how do you, on the one hand, be grateful and even be euphoric, and at the same time stay grounded in what's actually going on.
Yeah, stay grounded and stay focused on you and your behavior somehow. I noticed that I'm getting a bit irritated by people saying, well, I'm doing this and I'm going here for Christmas and I'm doing whatever, and I'm feeling like, well, I'm not, so no one else should. You know, there's a bit of there's a bit of resentment happening. So I just need to focus on me and what's right for me, I think.
Well, a very cute story. I mean, it's a little bit like looking at Facebook and thinking people have such wonderful lives, and yet you know them and they don't. You know, it's the same kind of thing. So I can understand the resentment. And in a way, it's almost, that's part of like, how do we accept the full gamut of what we're experiencing?
Yeah, yeah. How do we? And how do we, you know, get real really and think, okay, we've got a long way to go.
Yeah.
You know, this in terms of moods, I'm noticing some people starting to almost decompress from the tension that they've held on to and the huge amount of work they've been doing. Um, and it feels like we've got the kind of knock-on effect starting to be felt now with people.
Yeah, yeah. Well, in a way, I think part of it is, you know, what you're pointing to is the degree of stress we're under, and also I think the degree of fatigue for many people, it,
Yeah,
with no end in sight, you know.
yeah, absolutely. Yeah, pure full-on exhaustion actually, and part of that's not necessarily even people that haven't been working crazy hours, they've been on furlough or whatever, but actually it's holding that level of anxiety and uncertainty is exhausting, I think.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think, I mean, I'm going to speak personally. This year has not been a good year for me health-wise.
Mm,
And you know, my husband and I, we've chatted about it, and it's like, well, what's that about? Is it psychosomatic? You know, is it because, well, this is what's going on in the world and this is what's blowing up? Um, and I think to not underestimate that there is a degree of stress that we're not aware of or not paying attention to. Um, and that's going to play out. And you and I have ways of observing things by virtue of being a coach, and many people don't, you
yeah.
know. So yeah, so it's certainly a fascinating time. As the Chinese said, may you live in interesting times.
And Karen, when you look back at the interesting time that was 2020, what
Hmm.
have your key lessons been?
Well, I think it's so there's one word that comes up for me, and that's gratitude.
Mm,
So to continuously pay attention to what I'm grateful for. And I think part of the reasons Moods has been, aside from my work, Moods has been such a big thing, or why I mentioned it right at the beginning when we started chatting, is because I recognized probably about 3 or 4 months in that my mood was being impacted. And so I did something about it. I did a course, although that's part of the work that I do. I did a further course that helped me tune into my emotional space. So I think, and with what you were sharing, you know, going outward is not helpful. So looking
yeah.
at what other people are doing. You know, for me, I'm on a hiding to nothing when I do that. So I
Mm,
started to say, well, what is it that I can be grateful for? What is it? What part do I want to play? Not do I feel compelled to play? Um, and what part can I play? And what's important for me? How can I take care of myself? Because it's a long-term thing. It's not short-term.
yes.
So yeah. So those were some of mine, and I'd love to hear, what about you?
Um, a real thing about living in the now, and uh, not a, a change in what security means somehow. I had a piece of work that had been going on for years and years, and I thought it had really enabled me to give up other bits of work that I didn't love and focus on building my business in a way that I enjoyed, because I believed this work was secure. And it's the one bit that I lost. Yeah. So there's a bit about really focusing on now and what you can control, and also not being too reliant, I think, work-wise, on one area of work is important. But yeah, a reassessment about security. So actually, we've focused at home on growing vegetables. We've bought some more hens that are actual reliable layers, that kind of thing. You know, really practical, kind of going a bit down the self-sufficiency route, because that is secure, because we're in control of it. So yeah, a shift in what's needed. And you know, I mentioned to you before we went live about my car. You know, my car got written off in a storm, and the realization that I don't think I'm going to be traveling like I used to. I don't think I need the kind of car that I used to. My needs have changed, and I don't have any desire to go out like I used to. So yeah, it's kind of what can I do from home? What can I do to increase security for all different things? How can I be more self-reliant?
Yeah. Yeah, I think, I mean, and the way you've gone about doing that sounds amazing, because one of the things when you were talking about becoming more self-sufficient in the food sense, that also requires a degree of energy and effort, and almost like a balancing out of, or you have to live in the now in order to take care of those things.
You do. And I'm very lucky that I have a husband that's, you know, he's just focused this year on absolutely doing that stuff and freed me up to do other things. So, and I'm lucky that we've got land and we're able to do that. So I realize, I think that's the other lesson for me, is just appreciation of where I am. Because although it means that work can be harder in sense of when you're traveling, it's further, and it's, you know, actually when you're not doing that, when you're based at home, I'm in the best place.
Yeah. Yeah, I was meant to be traveling also this year, and it came at the time. In fact, the airline cancelled probably 10 days before I was due to climb on a plane. And had I climbed on the plane, I don't know when I would have got home.
Yeah.
And just such deep appreciation also for the space that I have, and the place and the people. You know, my family life, and then also understanding, I mean, there's been, you know, we spoke about tears. One of the things that has been very hard for me as a South African is observing the poverty line, and the degree of poverty people are living in, and just not being able to make a significant difference in people's lives in that way, you know. So you know, you talk about land. I've got space, and I've got a home, and there are lots of people who are on the opposite end of the spectrum, and how to not fall into a deep hole around that, be as compassionate as I can, make a difference where I can, and keep a bigger picture, I suppose, in terms of, I don't know what people's destinies are. Yeah.
When we start to look forward, then what do we need to take with us? What do we need to do with thinking of saying goodbye to 2020 and hello to 2021?
Well, as you were talking, there's I have these aphorisms that sort of hang about in the background, and this one comes from a movie called Buck, which you'll appreciate because it's a horse movie, and it goes, "Blessed are the flexible, for they shall never be bent out of shape."
Love it.
And so I think that's going to be key in going forward, is how do we remain flexible? How do we remain adaptable? How do we remain innovative? And by way of example, there's a little coffee shop down the road, and obviously they were closed for months. And I was driving past there today, and they've got, in addition to it now being open, but they're saying, freezer meals available. And I just think that's a great example of not saying, well, there's nothing I can do, because they've probably lost income. And in the process, they've thought, well, what can we do? So, and it links back, I think, to your self-reliance and self-agency. And how do we help people recognize that they really are resourceful? And what can they be resourceful about?
It's classic kind of career coaching stuff, isn't it? It's about thinking of the transferable skills and, you know, and thinking about the community need as well. I think I mentioned to you that a very quickly formed community group in Ireland for trade, small shop owners and craftspeople and home bakers and all sorts of people just have created this group. And I've bought loads of stuff from it. It's the idea that, you know, well, we can, if we all pool our resources, we can, I won't name the name, but a large online trading company that's making an absolute buck about everyone having to shop online. But
no, guess
named after a large tropical forest in Scotland. But you know, we are resourceful, and if we come together, we have shared resources. And if we look at, you know, instead of plans, if we think about principles and ways of working and the need for flexibility and not being dependent on false senses of security, I think that's probably the way forward.
Yeah, and as you were speaking, and for me, it cycles back if you think about where COVID started and how it started.
Yeah.
So not the country, but that actually as a result of us moving further and further afield from our lives and where our home base is, you know, we have landed up with a pandemic.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely.
So I agree with you. And we also, it's wonderful to see in South Africa, people are saying, how can I support not my neighbor, but my neighborhood? And how can I actually start to help people who I live close to be successful? Not in terms of making lots of money, but in terms of eking out a living and an existence. And I think, and I wonder what that might do to our values and how we value each other going forward.
Yeah, as hearing you speak, it's making me think about our role as coaches going into 2021. And I think it's almost reminding people of this, reminding people of their resourcefulness and how they realized what was important. And just bringing them back to that and not assuming this is all over, because actually this is, you know, we might have another pandemic next year. You know, who can say? But actually, how do we keep going in the direction that we want and choose and need to be going?
Yeah, and I think bringing our, you know, at the heart of it, if you look at good coaching and even great coaching, it's about helping people tap into their already resourcefulness.
Yeah.
It's also about people being seen and heard and being listened to. And I think that if ever were the time that people needed a soft place to land and to be able to be listened to, now is the time. So I think that so that they can think, they can do their best thinking and their best designing, and their best decision making in terms of what they want to move into and can.
I love that. A soft place to land. Karen, is there anything else that we need to think about for today?
I don't think so, Mary Anna, and I just want to appreciate how certainly when you and I have conversations, how you expand the range of my thought process. So I'm very grateful to have these conversations and to what you have created. And I do also want to say that Sharon Jansen, you are missing from this conversation. So
absolutely, no, and that's why I love these meetings, Karen, because it's a take an idea and run with it kind of feeling, and yes, and soft place to land for me, which is absolutely appreciated and needed.
Yeah.
So I'm going to stop this live broadcast and hopefully see you in a second in Zoom,
Okay.
if I can work out how to do that.